welcome to the portfolio.
There are a number of organizations working tirelessly to improve the lives of Korean Americans in New York.
We'd like to introduce some of these outstanding organizations to you with the hopes of raising awareness about the problems that a lot of us are facing and to inspire others to get involved in important community causes.
One such organization has been working hard to build a vibrant Korean American community since 2002.
It's called the Korean American Community Foundation.
KACF was founded exactly 10 years ago. It was in November of 2002 that a group of Korean American professionals were invited to have dinner together with the then Consul General, Ambassador Won Il-cho. It's a really kind of interesting evening because I think for so many of us who had been really kind of programmed in a way to think very individually about success and about our journey in America and to get the best education, to go after the best jobs. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all need to pursue individually, the best roads to success that we can. But we realized that in the process that many of us were very disconnected from the Korean American community in the same way that as you read the New York Times, that you don't read the Korean newspapers, or that the better your English, that maybe the more you can forget the Korean language. So I think for us, the challenge that was thrown out that night is here we are, many of us who are in the places that we are because somebody sacrificed, our parents' generation, first generation. And so given that we are so blessed in many ways, how can we take what we have today and kind of leverage it and pull it together to help our community and to give back? And there was a lot of heartfelt desire to find a way to do that, not in a random way or an individual way, but in some way that was more collective and strategic. And that was where the idea of not creating another direct service organization, because actually we found most of us, because we didn't really know about what are the issues or what are the needs, that we were not equipped to be service providers. But what we could do, and recognizing that so many nonprofit organizations in our community, that the greatest challenge is always about securing funding. We thought, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if we could all pool our contacts, our Rolodexes, whatever resources we can bring to the table, and then ensure that more funds flow to the community to help the most vulnerable. And so that was our mission, and that was how KACF started. I actually started my career at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. I was always really interested in poverty issues, and I think being Korean American, I grew up outside of Korea. I was born there, but at the age of 6, I left Korea and have never really lived there again. But in my lifetime, I witnessed the incredible transformation of my own country. From being, such a poor, poverty-stricken country to one of the great development success stories of our time. And I just was so excited about that and wanted to work in that field. At the time, I think in some ways, I was so idealistic and in a hurry to end world hunger before I turned 30, kind of thing. And the World Bank was such a big organization, and it does great work, but it was also very bureaucratic in many ways. And I found that it wasn't the greatest fit for me, and that's when I decided to make a switch to journalism, which was also something that I had always been interested in, but never really been encouraged to pursue. And I didn't really know anybody in the business, so it was actually kind of risky. Like, this was in the late 80s. I moved to New York. to take something, to be an unpaid intern, basically, in the Channel 5 newsroom.
Wow.
So at the time, that was, Fox was a very fledgling network. It had just taken over Metro Media. And so I think I was, in many ways, in the right place at the right time. But I was given a lot of opportunities to progress there that I wouldn't have had probably in the more established network. So I went pretty quickly from being, a production assistant to a field producer and writer, news writer, and then ultimately to an on-air reporter. And so, yeah, so, and that was sort of then into the 90s. That was a time when Korean grocery stores were getting boycotted. This was reflected nationally too, and this, erupted in the LA riots in '92. And I actually found myself in this situation of being the only Korean-speaking broadcast reporter in New York covering the Red Apple boycott, at the time. And being able to interview, actually, the grocer in the Korean language, and I think giving him a little bit more voice, because he really was quite an intelligent man with a story to tell, and yet because his English was limited, he came across as being scapegoated, in a way that the Korean community. I remember at the time doing the journalism work that thinking, wow, our Korean community, we need to do some work around having more voice, and also in fairness, also, in doing work around building bridges to other communities. And so I think that feeds in very much to the DNA and heart of what KACF is trying to do, that we are really about saying, Korean American community, well, we're here to stay. We want to make New York a better place, and we want to make America a better place. But we also want to be recognized as an immigrant community that is doing this work and wants to contribute. And so I didn't, in those days when I was doing the interviews, I never thought I would be a part of doing this, but I feel very blessed today to be doing this work.
Good evening, I'm Kyung Yoon. With all the high-tech advances in warfare, there's still one area where news is delivered the old-fashioned way. Stand up and fight to save local businesses that are so important to the city's economy. In Brooklyn, I'm Kyung Yoon, Fox News, Channel 5.
Started in 2002, and initially, the idea of KACF, because we had no track record, we were raising support by having very small events. Board members would have like coffees or little dinners at their home and invite some of their friends to engage them in the idea around KACF. And that was really the extent of our fundraising model, which was actually pretty effective, because even though each of us didn't know 100 people, we each knew about 10, and then maybe out of those 10, maybe a couple of them would have their own dinners, and that's how it's, we had these events called Circle of Friends. But in 2006, so we decided that we wanted to really, just try having a big fundraising gala, and it was a high-risk proposition because we didn't know if anybody would come. And I still remember, actually, I was one of the gala co-chairs together with Jim Wan, who is also a board member. We did things that were considered kind of radical in the Korean American community at that time. This is 2006. People had a kind of mindset at that time that of a fundraiser, that the tickets should be around $100 and that you would go for Korean food in Flushing or something like that. And we decided to charge, I remember, $300 for a ticket, and we did it at the Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan.
I remember that, yes.
And again, we had no idea, if people, would come. And it was so nerve-wracking, because signing that contract with the hotel guaranteeing that 250 people would attend. And even if, 100 people came, we were still liable for that commitment. And then we, Mr. Dong Jin-oh, who was then the head of Samsung Electronics USA. He signed on to be our corporate honoree, and we started fundraising around that and getting people to commit to tables. And I got to a point, this is a couple months before the gala, where shockingly it had never occurred to me that actually we would have more than 250 people. So I called up the manager of the Sheraton and I said, what happens if we have more than 250 people attend? And he was like, no problem. The ballroom's walls can move, so we can move one side and you can have 500 people up to, and I was like, oh great, don't move anything, but that's good to know. And then we're continuing to sell tickets, and we saw that there was interest and support from the community. And before long, I was on the phone with the manager of the Sheraton saying, could you move that wall? And then a few weeks later, I was on the phone asking him to move the other wall. Mm-hmm. And in the end, 750 people came to our first gala, and we raised more than $500,000 with that gala. And I think all of us who were in that room and looking at each other realized that this was a breakthrough moment for the Korean American community. This was something unprecedented, and we realized that yes, we are a community that is ready for, to give back in a way that is significant, and that we can use KACF as a vehicle to make that come true.
What kind of organizations does Korean American Community Foundation support?
From the very beginning, our mission has been very much focused around helping the most vulnerable, the most underserved members of our community and other communities as well. So given that, there are 5 issue areas that we work in, and one is helping organizations that serve the elderly, also youth, underserved youth. Also, we fund around safety, which encompasses domestic violence and trafficking.
And health.
And also health is our 4th, and we very intentionally define health as not only physical health, but mental health as well. And then the 5th is economic security. So we fund job training programs, whatever it takes to help individuals go from being vulnerable to being more self-sufficient. And so that is where the economic security comes in.
브롬스 한인 노인회는 1988년 7월에 창설이 됐어요. 그래갖고 금년이 25주년 되고, 여기서 오랫동안 그 수건 사업이, 이 지역에는 한국 식당이 없어요. 그 노인들이 고향의 입맛을 그리워하고, 그래서 특별히 KACF에서 그러면은 주로 지원해 주는 거는 이런 노인 점심 프로그램에 지원을 해주겠다 해서 주로 그 점심 프로그램에 비용을 쓰고 있어요.
Possibility Project is a nonprofit organization here in New York City, and we bring together teenagers from all over the city, from all different backgrounds, to transform the negative forces in their lives and in their communities into positive action. So what that means is that we bring together these groups for 10 months, the equivalent of the school year, and they go through a creative process we've developed where they learn to build relationships across difference, to resolve the conflicts they face in their lives, to engage in community action out in the city, and to lead. And the way they do that is each year we challenge them with 2 specific goals. One is they write and perform an original musical from the stories of their lives, focused on the most serious issues they face and their ideas for change. And then twice a year they do community action projects. Once as a whole cast, kind of like a flash mob we call it. And then the second time they form themselves into small teams. They choose an issue that they care about, and then they have to design and execute a project to make a difference on that issue, to either raise awareness about something they think people don't know about or to advocate for something they feel strongly about, and they have to do that in one day. The Korean American Community Foundation, we met them about 3 years ago. We spent a year talking and meeting with them, and then for the last 2 years we've been working with them to increase the participation of Korean American students and young people in our program, as well as Asian and Asian American students in our program. When we started with KACF 2 years ago, we had 0% of our students were Korean American or Asian, and we're now up to 4.5% of our students. And we expect that to grow because we're building relationships with the Korean American community, and KACF has been sort of instrumental. Beyond just granting funds, they have been a real partner.
Oh, come on in, pull up a chair. We got some stories we'd like to share. Trauma, laughter, tears, and comedy. Dancing, poetry, and song. Disses, kisses. Come along. Let's take a look at what you're gonna see.
Korean American Family Service Center, KAFSC, is a non-for-profit organization that is dedicated to ending and preventing domestic violence and sexual assault in our community. We are founded in 24 years ago, and we are the first agency that provides services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. We have a 24-hour bilingual hotline services that responds to about 150 hotline calls every single month. We also provide individual and family counseling. We have transitional housing, long-term shelter for victims of survivors of domestic violence. We also have vibrant children and youth programs that include Hodori after-school program, youth community project team for high school students, as well as mentoring program. We also does a lot of outreach and community education to raise awareness of domestic violence and sexual assault issues in our community, and also to train a lot of advocates to become volunteers for our 24-hour hotline. KAFSC was one of the first grantee partners of KACF. KACF not only has provided funding to our organizations, but also provided a lot of technical assistance and support to our organizations. KACF really embodies the true meaning of community partnership, and we are very much grateful for our continued partnership with KACF.
We're breast treatment task force. We provide screening, diagnostic follow-up like biopsies, MRIs, and full treatment to breast cancer patients that don't have any health insurance. We started the program with KACF. This is our second year receiving funding from them, and the 2 years combined we've been able, it'll be a total of about 400 women screened, and then anyone that needs further care if their mammogram comes back abnormal. And then we have had 3 patients so far that also have needed full treatment.
저는 유방암 환자입니다. 암 선고보다 치료비 때문에 더 벌벌 떨어야 하는 저희 같은 사람들에게 도움을 준 BTTF, 그런 단체들을 지원해 주시는 KACF, 그리고 여러분의 도움이 없었다면 저는 지금쯤 상상하기도 싫은 고통 속에서 하루하루를 견뎌야 했을 것입니다. 많은 사람들이 돈이 없어서 고칠 수 있는 병으로 쓰러져 가고 있다는 것을 꼭 알리고 싶습니다. 그리고 그들에게도 제가 받은 것처럼 희망과 도움의 손길이 있다는 것을 알려주고 싶습니다.
YWCA is one of the oldest women's organizations in the world. and we are a member of the over 300 local offices in the United States. And our particular Y turns 35 this year, in 2013. We have a children's center, center for youth and seniors and adults. KACF has been funding one of our flag programs, the home care training service. It's part of our Women to Work initiative that we initiated about 7-8 years ago.
신장에 문제가 없는 한은 꼭 물을 많이 드셔서 순환이 잘 되게끔 피가 오래 머물러 있으면 홍역이라든가 수두라든가 결핵은 그런 식으로 격리를 시켜서 저희 홈케어 하시는 분들이 대략 한 200명 정도가 돼요. 그런데 지난번 화요일, 목요일, 토요일 이렇게 나눠서 교육을 실시하거든요. 그래서 오늘은 한 60명 정도 참석하셨어요. 이 교육은 사실은 KACF에서 펀드를 받아서 처음에 트레이닝 기간을 가져요. 75시간이라는 홈 헬스 에이드 트레이닝 프로그램이라는 그 교육 과정을 거쳐서 배출되신 분들이에요. 그래서 지금 현재로 저희는 이제까지 1기에서부터 7기까지 모두 112명을 배출을 했어요. 저희가 그 펀드를 통해서 그래도 우리 스태프들의 어떤 교육 프로그램을 짜서 그래서 도움을 줄 수 있었기 때문에 지금 잡을 가지시고 그리고 나서 지금 일을 현재 환자분들께 서비스를 제공하시는 분들이에요.
이제 저희 Y 자체에서 이제 처음으로 이제 그때 학생들을 교육시켜서 이렇게 저희 에이드들을 이제 배출하기 시작했을 때 처음에 제가 시작했고요. 제가 처음에 일을 했었던 장소가 어디였었냐면 루즈벨트 아일랜드로 일을 나가게 됐어요. 그래서 너무너무 신이 나는 거예요. 사람들하고 같이 일을 한다라는 그 자체가 내가 살아있다라는 그런 보람이 있고 또 무언가 일을 한다라는 거에 대해서 굉장히 기쁨으로 시작을 하게 됐어요. 추운 겨울이었지만 하나도 춥게 느껴지지 않았고 제가 지금 한 1년, 거의 2년째 일을 하고 있는데 저는 굉장히 이 일이 보람되다고 생각하고 우리 자녀들도 굉장히 좋아해요. 아이들도 엄마가 열심히 사는 모습이 이렇게 너무 좋다고 아이들도 그러고 또 남편도 많이 도와주시고 그래서 그냥 나름대로 열심히 하고 있습니다.
You've been a driving force behind this organization, you and of course many other wonderful board members.
There are just so many great people, great leaders who have, I see it as been real pillars of KACF. Often organizations are strongly identified with one individual or one leader, and I think when you look at KACF, there are so many people who are holding this up and have really driven the success on many fronts, whether it comes to helping with our becoming better resource to our community through our grant making, that we're not just writing a check and saying goodbye, but that we're really there in the long term. And I think we've been able to grow our professional staff to be able to be a true resource to KACF as well.
KACF has sponsored many important events in the community, and in particular, I remember a time when Mayor Bloomberg worked with KACF to communicate with the Korean American community. Kevin, you officiated that town hall meeting. What was that like for you?
Sojung, it was a truly incredible experience for me and I think for many of the people involved. The audience was made up of Korean American organizations from all throughout the city, and I think it was really the first time that they had engaged in a town hall-like discussion with Mayor Bloomberg, who brought along all his city commissioners from every agency, and they had an opportunity to directly communicate with the mayor of New York City. And the role that KACF played that day to be the bridge between city government agencies and these nonprofit organizations, I think was a truly historic moment.
Isn't it wonderful that we're here tonight to support an organization who's trying to level the playing field and provide opportunities for all.